Welcome. This is Radioactive Banana, and it's September 3rd at 11:19 a.m. And on screen, you see the article by Newsweek, which I showed in my last video on the Tapi Pipeline. And I've found more information on the Tapi Pipeline, and so I just wanted to share that with you. So in this article, I went over it in the last video. I won't go over it again. But the headline is Joe Biden's State Department denies role in Taliban pipeline talks with Turkmenistan, by Jack Dutton on 2/19/2021. And just the first paragraph, the State Department has denied facilitating a recent meeting between the Taliban and officials in Turkmenistan about the proposed development of a pipeline that will stretch across the Tapi countries. Now, pay attention to the words in this. So when we're doing propaganda, words are very important. This is a proposed pipeline. We're just proposing it. We haven't written it down. We haven't made any plans. Oh, wait, but there's a technical assistance report in phase 3, but we haven't done anything. All right, so it's proposed. So let's see what else is going on here. This is The Diplomat, a fantastic CIA Mockingbird paper. It's just great. Taliban visit Turkmenistan and promise again to protect the Tapi. You know, in the last video, I was wondering if the Taliban had been asked to be security for the pipeline. I found some documents to show you. All right, this is by Catherine Putz. And February 9th, 2021, just 10 days before this article. The Taliban visit Turkmenistan and promise again to protect the Tapi. Now, Tapi has been long hailed as a monumental, important project, but it's unclear whether it will ever be built. Oh, geez, people. We don't even know. Over the weekend, a Taliban delegation led by Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar paid a visit to Turkmenistan, where the Taliban again expressed full support of the Tapi pipeline. In December 2016, the Taliban said they were committed to safeguarding national infrastructure projects like Casa 1000 and Tapi. In 2018, a Taliban spokesman told Voice of America that the Taliban viewed Tapi as an important element of Afghan's economic infrastructure and announced the group's cooperation in providing security for the project in areas under our control. The Taliban's second-in-command reportedly met with Turkmen Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Rashid Meredov on February 6. According to a Turkmen Foreign Ministry readout of the meeting, the two sides stressed the importance of establishing and maintaining peace and stability in Afghanistan. Well, Miss Catherine Putz has actually picked Mr. Meredov as a source, and, well, Mr. Meredov was in this article where we found him to be lying, saying they were just about finished with the fiber optic communication lines and they're just going to start the natural gas pipeline in 2021, and I found this to be a complete lie. Now, let's go back. So, Ms. Catherine Putz is using Mr. Meredov, a source that lies, in her article. All right. The latest pledge of support and security comes amid sluggish but direct talks between the Taliban and the Afghan government. Meanwhile, the United States, freshly under new leadership, is reviewing the previous administration's deal with the Taliban that stipulated a full withdrawal by May 2021. So the U.S. did have a deal with the Taliban. EurasiaNet recently outlined the U.S. interest in seeing the Tapi project actualized and Washington's efforts to bring the Afghans and Turkmen together, for example, via a new trilateral debut in October 2020. Debuted in October 2020, and a Turkmen stop on U.S. Afghan envoy Zalmay Khalil's early January round of jet-setting. Zalmay Khalilzad is jet-setting around in January, and he's a U.S. envoy. What is Khalilzad doing? I don't know, but you see the language here. Actualized. The project They want to see it actualized, brought into existence, because we don't have anything like this. The third phase from the Asian Development Bank. No, we're still working on actualizing it. Nothing in paper. Now let's take a look at this article by EurasiaNet right over here. Okay, I have that up. And this is February 6, 2021. The previous article was February 9th, and Newsweek is February 21st. And so this year in February was just a huge, huge propaganda moment for the Taliban and the pipeline. All right, let's read this. Taliban vows to guarantee safety of trans-Afghanistan gas pipeline. The security pledge could encourage international investors to get involved. And it says a Taliban delegation has paid a surprise visit to Turkmenistan to pledge support for a planned natural gas pipeline across Afghanistan. Planned. It's a planned. Providing welcome reassurance for a project whose viability has long been rendered doubtful by security concerns. Signs point to the trip having been brokered by the U.S. government, which has long championed what is known as TAPI, named after the four countries the pipeline would cross. Shahel Shaheen, a member of Taliban's Qatar-based negotiations team, told reporters in Ashgabat on February 6th that his movement was offering full support for the implementation and security of TAPI and other developmental projects in our country. Shaheen explicitly addressed the most commonly aired worry about the prospects for TAPI by reassuring his hosts that not only would the project not be targeted for attacks, but that the Taliban was committed to ensuring its safety. Do you think the Taliban has shares in the TAPI? I do. I'll eventually find that. We are trying to contribute to prosperity for our people and development of our country by providing protection to all projects, he said in English from a written statement. The other projects alluded to by the Taliban spokesman are the Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan high-voltage power transmission lines, or TAP, and railways from Turkmenistan to Afghanistan. That's just perfect for the Silk Road, right? That's aiding the Silk Road. Putting in railways, transmission lines. Should such reassurances hold, the main hurdle facing TAPI's developers would be raising the necessary funds. Estimated costs for the projects have been placed at anywhere up to $10 billion, although the chief executive of the TAPI pipeline company, Aminov, stated in 2018 that he was forecasting outlays closer to $7 billion. With the Taliban on board, Ashgabat may now hope international investors can be persuaded to get involved. Does that sound crazy or what? Because the Taliban is on board, they can persuade investors? I would think that would make investors go away, but the reality is this pipeline is built. It is done. Investments have been made. So this is a big game that countries have played over and over again with these big, huge banks. Asian Development Bank is in on this, and what they do is they say, just like they've been doing, it hasn't been built after it already has, and now they begin to extort taxes from the taxpayers of the country to say they're going to build this pipeline even though it's already built. And who knows if they're going to take that money and invest in these power transmission lines, and then they'll say, hey, we need money for power transmission lines, and then they'll build the railway and say, hey, we need money for the railway. Or do they take money and go to New York Central Park and buy a $35 million flat? I don't know, but this is 2021 when this article is written, and the pipeline is complete. I will go over the investors. Let's keep going. Global energy majors have laterally shown no enthusiasm for TAPI, but that was not always the way. In 1997, a consortium comprised of 6 companies and the government of Turkmenistan was formed with the goal of building a pipeline to Pakistan. India was not yet part of it. And Afghanistan was not part of it either. They didn't want to be a part of it. Enron tried to convince them. The largest share in that consortium, 54%, was held by California-based Unocal Corporation. In 1997, the American company even arranged travel to Texas for a senior Taliban delegation for negotiations. Deadly terrorist attacks in 1998 against U.S. embassies in Tanzania and Kenya, organized by al-Qaeda, whose leader Osama bin Laden had been proved safe haven by the Taliban. This end of this sentence is a mess. It's ridiculous. Now, let's look at this. In 1997, Unocal was a part of a consortium and wanting to build a pipeline. Unocal is a Rockefeller corporation. I always just say the Rockefellers, but there's the Rockefeller Group that owns all these oil. Anything to do with oil, anything to do with energy, natural gas, anything to do with energy, the Rockefellers own. So you can see, starting in 1997, this says that the Unocal guys brought the Taliban here for negotiations in 1997. So in 1997, Unocal meets with the Taliban. This is 1 year after the Taliban is organized. And again, in the last video, we see an article from HuffPost that says that Unocal met with the Taliban in 2012. So how many meetings did Unocal have with the Taliban? And exactly what were they discussing? Now let's scroll down. And we come to here. In hindsight, it appears that clues of imminent dialogue between Turkmenistan and the Taliban were there to see. And it is highly probable that Washington has been serving as a go-between. Can you believe this sentence? Oh yes, all along we knew that Turkmenistan and Taliban were going to be talking to each other. It just, it's just there to see, and we're letting you know this so you investors can come along. This is so ridiculous. So Turkmenistan was always going to be negotiating with the rapists, murderers, terrorists, drug trafficking, women abusing Taliban. In hindsight, it was always imminent. And that Washington has been serving as a go-between. It's highly probable. That's what it says. All right. On January 3rd, the U.S. representative for Afghanistan reconciliation, Ambassador Zalmay Khalilzad, now I didn't know that, he's the ambassador to Afghanistan because we have him as a U.S. envoy and they never say where he's from. So now we find out that Mr. Zalmay Khalilzad is an ambassador and he's working for the State Department. And he embarked on a whistle-stop tour that took in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Qatar, and Turkmenistan. According to a State Department statement, Khalilzad's objectives included urging the countries to pursue plans for expanded regional connectivity, trade, and development, which will be aided by an Afghan peace agreement and will help sustain peace. So Zalmay is going there and working on trade deals, probably for corporations, setting the path for other corporations. But let's look at this link. I clicked on it. And what does it say? Oh, we apologize for this. It's missing and it's an inconvenience. But you know what? Out of her article, when I clicked on this for Zalmay Khalilzad's jet setting, it brought me here. U.S. State Department Special Representative Khalilzad's travels to Afghanistan, Pakistan, Qatar, and Turkmenistan, January 4th, 2021. So in January, he's a special representative from the State Department. From this news agency, he's an ambassador. From another agency, he's a U.S. envoy. But we're going to have to take the State Department's word for it that he's a special representative. and he is traveling. This is very generic. He departed to South and Central Asia on January 3rd in Doha, meeting with 2 Afghan teams, wants their support to accelerate the peace process, reduce violence and ceasefire. And in the region, now here they state under the State Department that he's an ambassador. Okay, so we have to confirm. Oh, I missed it right there. We have to confirm that he is the ambassador. And the State Department then was actually working with the Taliban and Turkmenistan on the pipeline. During this trip, Ambassador Khalilzad will continue to encourage projects and plans for expanded regional connectivity, trade, and development. Going in for the corporations and trying to get their piece of the pie on what they can do there, how they can bring in the corporations. They have it all planned out. All right, let's come back to this article from the Diplomat, and we just looked at EurasiaNet. And we're going to scroll down because there's so much to take from this article. And you're going to hear my dog upstairs playing. Sorry about that. All right. In January 2020, Afghan media reported that work in Afghanistan had not actually begun, with delays attributed to unsigned memorandums of understanding. It's hard to imagine much progress was made in 2020 between the pandemic and the Afghan government's talks with the Taliban. All right, let's start there. So they have unsigned memorandums of understanding. This is delaying the pipeline. That is what they're saying. But let's take a look at this article by the Kama Press News Agency. And this was February 2017. Afghanistan signs Memorandum of Understanding to inaugurate engineering design of the TAPI pipeline. No kidding. This article by Catherine Putz tells us it's been delayed because these unsigned memorandums of understanding, and yet a memorandum of understanding was signed in the presence of President Mohammad Ashraf Ghani for the inauguration of the engineering design of TAPI gas pipeline project. You see, this was already signed. And let's see. The project will produce a revenue of around $400 million to the Afghan government annually. Besides, the project will pave the way for other infrastructure projects, including railway, electricity, industrial parks, and fiber optics. So the Taliban is going to be getting $400 million of revenue. Besides, there's transit fees from Turkmenistan and Pakistan, which is $400 to $600 million also. So you see here, what's happening is that this propaganda keeps being rolled out, but there's papers all over the world that have little bits and pieces of information that can help us go through these articles and figure them out. But this is just incredible lies. All right, let's continue on here. The previous year, in April 2019, Radio Free Europe's Bruce Panier took note of reports that suggest the previously reported as complete Turkmen section of the pipeline might not have actually been completed. So let's look at this article. And this is April 4th, 2019, another Turkmen pipe mystery. And what Mr. Panier finds is that extra pipeline is being brought in to Turkmenistan. He's confused because the pipeline is finished. He uses 2 sources to state that the pipeline is finished in Turkmenistan, but then the government website says it is not finished. And so in the end, Mr. Panier is confused about what the hell is going on. So he's doing a great investigation, but Mr. Panier just doesn't know what the big picture is. He's not familiar with the game going on here. And what's going on is that the pipeline for Afghanistan is being brought into Turkmenistan. That's what's happening. And when he asks what's going on, they just say, well, this is being brought to the construction site. Well, where's the construction site? It's in Afghanistan. And this picture says, more than a year after Ashgabat announced its section of the Tapi natural gas pipeline was done, state company Turkmengas is still ordering sections for the project. Turkmenistan has been purchasing a lot of pipeline segments for the Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India pipeline. I need to just call that TAPI, which is interesting because the head of the TAPI pipeline company said in February 2018 that the Turkmen section, which runs more than 200 kilometers, was completed. But in November, Turkmen state media reported that Saudi Arabia's global pipeline company had started deliveries of 35 kilometers of pipeline for TAPI, and another pro-government website reported that once the cargo arrives at a train station in eastern Turkmenistan, the steel pipes are immediately transported to construction sites for assembly. Yeah, that's pretty generic, isn't it? Construction sites for assembly. Turkmenistan is above Afghanistan. That is where the connection goes from Turkmenistan to Afghanistan. Afghanistan connects up with Pakistan. Pakistan connects up with India. All right, so there's these extra pipelines that are coming in, and he just does not know what's going on. Turkmen officials never explained the need for this additional length of pipeline. In April 2nd, a report from the Russian website finam.ru said the Chelyabinsk pipe rolling plant had won a tender to supply 214 kilometers of pipe for the TAPI pipeline. According to the report, Turkmen state company Turkmengas announced the Chelyabinsk plant as the winner of the contract worth some $219 million. Russia's Sberbank approved the letter of credit for the deal. Turkmengas is the consortium leader for the TAPI project, despite having no experience with projects outside Turkmenistan. So in this article, we find out who the leader of the consortium is, and it is Turkmengas. It's a company. Okay, and let's go down here a little bit. Here's a second source. An April 2nd report from the Turkmen state website Golden Age says President Berdimuhamedov held a meeting with officials on March 20th to discuss preparations for the upcoming gas congress in Turkmenistan. It says officials discussed various energy sector projects, and the TAPI was discussed. Currently, construction of the 214-kilometer Turkmen section of the pipeline is being finished. So according to a state website, the pipeline is not finished, and the pipeline sections from the Chelyabinsk plant are coincidentally just enough to construct the whole length of Turkmenistan's section of the TAPI pipeline. So there is another mystery involving the TAPI pipeline. Is the Turkmen section really complete? Has anything even been built? What happened to the 35 kilometers of pipeline the Saudi Arabia company delivered? Well, we have two sources that say the pipeline is complete. This was part of a meeting where they discussed energy sector projects, and the Turkmen was definitely complete. He's just confused. Why is all this other pipe coming in from Saudi Arabia? And so then you see how Saudi Arabia plays a part in this whole crap, right? That is just amazing. All right. And the last line from this article, the readout on the recent meeting with the Taliban from the Turkmen Foreign Ministry does not offer a deadline for the project, nor does it touch on the critical question of financing. Yep, nobody's interested. Nobody has an interest in financing this natural gas pipeline. Now let's take a look at another article written by Catherine Putz on December 1st, 2016. Taliban pledged to protect infrastructure projects. The Taliban say they are committed to safeguarding national infrastructure projects like CASA 1000 and TAPI. I don't know much about CASA 1000, but I'm sure it has to do with the Silk Road. And this is one of the sharpest and simplest criticisms lobbied at the host of big-ticket infrastructure projects spanning Central and South Asia is the risk of disruption by militant groups. The CASA 1000 and TAPI pipeline are both designed to cross the breadth of Afghanistan, routing through both new and old hotspots for violence, as will other initiatives like the Turkmenistan-Afghanistan-Tajikistan Railway. Security concerns are cited by critics, myself included, to pour a little cold water on the enthusiastic rhetoric surrounding the projects. To be fair, there are other concerns. Funding and feasibility are also areas of serious debate between positive governments and development institutions and more skeptical regional analysts. Positive governments, who are they? We don't know. Development institutions, who are they? We don't know. Skeptical regional analysts, we don't know. This is meaningless. It means nothing to us. In December 2015, Turkmenistan made a big show of beginning construction of the TAPI pipeline. There was another groundbreaking celebration in May because reasons? Yeah, I don't know. She forgot to put the reasons there. At that point, Afghanistan pledged to raise a 7,000-man security force just to guard the construction. Cabal simultaneously needed to make the argument that there was enough security for the project to move ahead, while also still railing against the Taliban for attacks and disruptions to existing infrastructure and ongoing projects. In January, the Taliban were blamed for blowing up an electricity transmission pylon near the Beglahan-Kunduz highway. But now the Taliban have stated categorically that they have committed to safeguarding national projects like TAPI and CASA 1000. In a statement this week, the Taliban said that they not only back all national projects which are in the interest of the people and result in the development and prosperity of the nation, but are also committed to safeguarding them. The group urged all its mujahideen to help in the security of all national projects that are in the higher interest of Islam and the country. The statement was met with requisite skepticism by Afghan government officials and others. A deputy presidential spokeswoman, Shah Murtazari, told VOA's Afghan service, over the past few months, the Taliban, have inflicted more than 2 billion Afghanis of damage to infrastructure and public properties in 11 provinces. They have to prove their promises in action. Well, what shall I say about this? The Taliban has inflicted $300 million in damage to infrastructure and public properties, and they also blew up an electrical transmission. All this stuff just helps the Silk Road. You take out all these properties. Oops, it was fighting. We took all this stuff out, and then they go in and buy these properties up, and then they start building, or they just save the land until they're ready to put in your Best Buy and your McDonald's. And the Taliban is working with the CIA as well as the Mujahideen. The Taliban and the Mujahideen have been developed by the CIA. And the elite, the Pope and the royals, they are running the CIA. The CIA is making these groups to go in and damage this infrastructure for the Silk Road. You see how these groups have been made? Like Hamas and like Hezbollah in Israel, both of them are ran by the Mossad and CIA. They have fights in cities. The last big explosion in Israel, where Hamas shot bombs towards Israel and Israel shot bombs back, killed 600 people. 600 people in Palestine, but blew up some streets in Israel. And same thing with the Hezbollah. They are working for Israel. They are working for CIA. They go into these towns and start shooting from these towns specifically so that the other side, like Israel, will send missiles back and kill 600 people. This is a plot. This is a setup. Hamas and Hezbollah are pieces of shit working for the CIA as well as Taliban and Mujahideen. But these people, these absolute horrid terrorists, are going to be guarding the pipeline. I have a problem with this because in this document by our military, Afghanistan's narco war, breaking the link between drug traffickers and insurgents, written for the Committee on Foreign Relations in 2009, having an executive summary by Kerry, John F. Kerry, and in the executive summary saying that they were going to stop the Taliban and their drugs and insurgents, and the only way that they could build a government was to take them down, and they were going to build crops and a government. None of this was achieved by the U.S. military. None of this was achieved at all from 2009. And in fact, they built the Taliban as the government. This would seem to me that the CIA is doing completely the opposite of the objectives of the U.S. military. Does it look that way to you? Let's look at a few more articles by Catherine Putz. This is TAPI Moves into Afghanistan. Taliban promised to protect the project. Yet another ceremony to mark the progress of the TAPI pipeline. And I just have a few points to make. So here she says, on Friday, representatives from the TAPI gathered in Herat to mark the start of the work on Afghan portion of the TAPI pipeline. Well, if they had started on 2018 to gather and mark the start of the pipeline, that means the Turkmenistan pipeline has already been finished. And now the Afghan part is going to begin like we know it did, and we have seen the survey in the previous video. But if you come to 2021, in her article, she quotes EurasiaNet as saying everybody hopes that the project can be actualized. Yes, it's not built at all, and it's unclear whether it will ever be built. That is in 2021. In 2018, she's telling us they're starting on the Afghan side. That's my first point. Now come down here, the president of Afghan, Ghani, at the ceremony was joined by the Turkmen president, the Pakistani prime minister, and the Indian minister of state for external affairs, and General John Nicholson, commander of the U.S. Air Forces in Afghanistan and NATO's Resolute Support Mission. The general and NATO's Resolute Support Mission is there. They know about the pipeline, obviously. And do the generals work to keep all fighting away from the pipeline so it can be built? Have the generals ever mentioned that there is a pipeline being built in Afghanistan? Have you ever heard them talk about this? I think this is really damning right here, actually. Let's look at one more article regarding the U.S. and Taliban negotiations, and this is by Tolo News, and it's March 2019. U.S. Taliban's Qatar talks end with agreement in draft. U.S. Special Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad says the conditions for peace have improved. Now, Zalmay is the ambassador, so I'm not sure why they don't use that. Maybe they don't want people to realize he's from the State Department. All right, the fifth round of talks between the U.S. and Taliban negotiators in Qatar ended after 16 days on Tuesday, with agreement in draft between the two sides on some key issues under debate. Boy, just so informative. Key issues, my goodness. Hours after the news broke on Qatar talks, U.S. Special Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad said in a tweet that he wrapped up a marathon round of talks with the Taliban in Doha. Yes, 2019, State Department is working with the Taliban in Doha. Yes, they are, ladies and gentlemen. And what I just wanted to say here, it says, the group said no deal has been signed by the negotiating teams and that they will come together after consulting their leaderships about current developments. A couple of U.S. bases are expected to remain in Afghanistan. Well, shit, we're leaving behind all of our weapons. Why not just, give our bases away too? Why not? But I just wanted to show you that article that there was extensive negotiations with an ambassador from the State Department talking with the Taliban in 2019. And again, the Taliban is a group we're supposed to be taking down because they're terrorists and they're also trafficking drugs with insurgents and the CIA. All right, let's look at another article. This was in 2020, more TAPI delays, this time in Afghanistan. A law on land acquisition and critical memorandum of understanding remains unsettled. We already know these memorandums of understanding were signed in 2017. Not that the TAPI pipeline needs any more delays, but Afghan officials says laws on land acquisition for the project as it crosses Afghanistan have not been signed, meaning the project's timeline remains as foggy as ever. Now let's come down here. There is a need for approval of the law on land acquisitions, but there are delays because the MPs are busy in discussing former decrees by the president. Now, right here after land acquisition, there was a parenthesis that said confiscation. And I wish I would have taken a screenshot of it, but I pulled this article up today on September 5th, and it said confiscation right here after land acquisition. And I just really wanted to point that out. And I do not believe that they are slow on land acquisition. I believe the drone killing was for all the people who owned land along the pipeline route. And this is just another article to say that the TAPI pipeline is not coming along. Now here's another article. TAPI gas pipeline being built in line with schedule, December 2018. At the meeting, they were saying everything was going according to the planned schedule. The construction of the pipeline began in December 2015. The possible cost is between $7 and $10 billion. The consortium, with the participation of the Asian Development Bank, continues active negotiations with all interested parties. Various options of participation in the project, such as participation in the company's share, project financing through international development banks, and with the help of export credit agencies from around the world, are being examined. But this is just all proposed, and it hasn't been actualized. Remember, everybody? It hasn't been actualized. But yet, here's another paper from Azerbaijan. Here's one more article I have to share with you. This was 2019, and this is from Reporter's Diary. Pakistan has all set to start construction on the TAPI gas pipeline in January 2020. Now, if Pakistan is ready to start construction, that means Afghanistan is done. That means that Turkmenistan is done. The pipeline is complete. And here is a picture of the pipeline. And this last article in 2020, this picture here says, for illustration only, it's not clear any part of the TAPI has gotten this far. But yet here's a picture, and I showed other pictures of the pipeline at the very beginning of this video. So there's just a whole lot of con jobs going on. Islamabad. Construction activities on proposed TAPI pipeline will kickstart by the end of January 2020 on the Pakistan section. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, on the Pakistan section. Now let's look at the finances. This is a report by the Asian Development Bank, and it's a technical assistance report. I showed it in the last video, and this was written May 2012. And this is phase 3 of the TAPI pipeline. And we are going to go down to paragraph number 4. At the party's request, Asian Development Bank has been TAPI's secretariat since 2002. Asian Development Bank's role has been instrumental in facilitating and balancing the interests of the parties. TAPI is being implemented in 4 phases. Phase 1 was completed with the signing in December 2010 of the Gas Pipeline Framework Agreement, Intergovernmental Agreement, and Heads of Agreement relating to the gas sales and purchase agreement. So in 2010, they signed all these agreements. So it's not proposed, and it really hasn't actualized yet, according to EurasiaNet, quoted by Catherine Putz. No, it's actualized. It's more than proposed. It's moving along. Phase 2 will end with the expected signing of the GSPA in 2012. ADB has organized 14 ministerial-level steering committees. Steering committee meetings and 16 technical working group meetings thus far. ADB also financed several technical studies and the drafting of agreements. The parties have asked ADB to continue as a secretariat in Phase 3 for the SPCC consortium lead selection, establishing the SPCC, and finalizing the GSPA-related operational agreements. The pipeline will be constructed in Phase 4. So wouldn't you say they're moving quite well along? Phase 4 will be the building, all right? And now we go down to this next section, methodology and key activities. Stage 1. After the signing of the GSPAs, representatives of the parties and ADB will meet with prospective consortium leads and financiers at roadshows to determine the market and conditions under which qualified firms would participate in TAPI. 4 roadshows will be organized at oil and gas hubs in Asia, Europe, and North America. I'm sure there is just so much information to gather on these roadshows as evidence that this is more than proposed. The TA will finance the cost of the roadshows, venue, refreshments, conference equipment, and translation services. An international individual consultant, oil and gas expert, will be engaged to structure the roadshows, coordinate the invitations, and ensure the participation of suitable prospective private investors. Who would be suitable prospective private investors? Would that be the Queen of England, the royals of Japan, the royals of Spain? They never had a hard time finding investors. These people, these elite rich people, are more than happy to be part owners of anything related to energy where they know they're going to make a lot of money. They didn't have a hard time at all. All right, it says, after the roadshows, the consultant will prepare a project investment market study report detailing the potential consortium leads, financiers, and prerequisites for participation, set out the merits and demerits, and make recommendations for a strategy to attract bidders and promote competition. A legal advisor will be available to answer questions on the GSPA, Gas Pipeline Framework Agreement, Heads Agreement, and Intergovernmental Agreement. Several resource persons will be engaged under the TA to advise on security, safeguard, and commercial oil and gas aspects during the roadshows. And so you see there are so many people involved. that say nothing about the pipeline. And I don't think they at any time had problem funding the pipeline. But ladies and gentlemen, the pipeline is done, and they're trying to extort money next from the Afghan citizens. And this has to stop. This look into the Tapi pipeline is just, it's just a small view into what's happened over and over again throughout the world. And we have to make these people accountable for destroying countries, killing people, raping them, torture, for a pipeline. And to control the world, because they control the energy, they'll control the transmission lines, and if you don't mind, they basically can just cut off your food. If you don't mind, they'll just starve you to death. They could care less. As long as they get what they want, the ends justifies the means, right? The Silk Road is going to bring so much good to the Middle East that creating all these wars and killing all these people, that's okay. That's okay. Now let's look at this article by Zero Hedge. 90 retired generals penned scathing letter calling for Austin and Milley to resign immediately. Nearly 100 retired generals and admirals are demanding the U.S. Defense Secretary and former Raytheon board member Lloyd Austin and chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff Mark Milley to resign immediately over the botched Afghanistan withdrawal. Well, retired generals, I really appreciate you calling these gentlemen out for this ridiculous withdrawal, obviously staged to make the U.S. military look weak. It's completely staged and set up to make the military look weak, and the guys on the ground probably had no idea what was going on. No, I just surprised as anything that they were just all of a sudden leaving Afghanistan. But the guys at the top knew, and we want more than these sacrificial lambs because of this event. We want the Pentagon, the US DoD, and their advisory board with Henry Kissinger and Madeleine Albright. We want the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and we want all the generals who were in the military during the time of the Afghan and Iraq War. We want all of them brought to justice. We do not believe what happened is what actually happened. We don't believe that you went in to Afghanistan to go after Osama bin Laden, a CIA asset who helped start the Mujahideen and Taliban. We don't believe that. You went in to 9/11 occurred to get into the Middle East, like Prouty said. They needed a reason to get in. They needed to take over everybody's government. They needed to survey their resources, take over their resources, and move everybody towards this one world government. That is what this was about. And I hope that military people will comment down below and leave me their thoughts. And all of my links to all these articles will be down below. And I ask that you go out and research them too. But it's time for us to make these people accountable.
In the very beginning chapter of the book, you use a term that I think was originally coined by Buckminster Fuller, the international power elite. And you talked in what to me was very impressive terms about some of these behind-the-scenes decision makers. You talked about the propaganda schemes that sort of define their world outlook. And I think, maybe it would be worthwhile as we get into this real history of the Cold War to perhaps start out by just telling people a little bit about this international power elite and these propaganda schemes and how some of this thing works.
Well, it's very common for people to respond when you try to speak that way, saying, oh, well, here's somebody that just believes in conspiratorial theories or is a little bit paranoid. But now we ought to stop and think carefully what we're talking about. all of history has been controlled by powerful figures. Disraeli in the 19th century said, for those people who are not aware of it, if they realize what goes on behind government, they wouldn't believe it. Sun Tzu, the Chinese emperor, said the same thing back in his period. Buckminster Fuller goes back 2,000 years talking about the elite. And in this country today, we recognize the power behind, let's say, lobbyists who are, in a sense, above the government in that they pay special money to the president to get him reelected. They pay special money to senators and congressmen to get them reelected, but to influence legislation in their favor. And there is and has been throughout history an elite that runs countries and the world. What is this one world all about? And if we don't recognize that, it's very difficult to understand the situation we're in.
Thank you for watching my investigation on the Tappy Pipeline, and I will continue to investigate Afghanistan, and I hope you'll follow along because there is so much to learn. We have been deceived more than we possibly know. This is Radioactive Banana, signing out.